We tagged 4 or 5 great white sharks, and one of them in particular, shark alpha, was around 9-10 feet in length.
A major air and sea search is underway tonight for a fisherman believed to have been taken by a shark.
The ocean is full of monsters, but not all of them are the ones we expect. When scientists tagged a massive great white shark, they thought they were tracking a top predator, not a victim. What happened next stunned the world. The shark disappeared, leaving only a data tag and a chilling trail of clues. Was the killer a giant squid, a killer whale, or something far older and more terrifying? This is the true story of the great white shark that was eaten by a mystery monster and the quest that finally uncovered the truth. The vanishing of shark alpha. Long before the news headlines and wild theories, there was only the steady rhythm of the Southern Ocean and the quiet focus of scientists hoping to unravel its secrets. In 2003, when a research team set out from the rocky coast of South Australia, the ocean stretched endless and cold beneath them, brimming with ancient stories and dangerous shadows. These scientists were part of a growing movement determined to understand the life and fate of the great white shark, the ocean's most infamous predator. They came equipped with new technology, geotagging devices designed to follow every movement of their chosen subject. A 9-foot-long female they would soon call Shark Alpha. She was not an ordinary specimen, but a massive, scar-slicked survivor, her dorsal fin cutting the water like a blade as she circled the boat, wary and unafraid. The team worked quickly, adrenaline thrumming as they eased her alongside the hull and attached the tracker, a small device meant to record temperature, depth, and every shift in her restless journey. There was no sign on that first day that this animal would become a mystery at the center of global fascination. Alpha slipped back into the blue without protest, her powerful body disappearing in a swirl of bubbles and fading sunlight. The researchers packed up, satisfied, ready to follow her migration through the coming months and hoping she would offer new insight into the lives of the ocean's most secretive hunters. For 4 months, the data flowed back in perfect pulses. The slow rise to the surface for warmth, the sudden plunges into deep, shadowy canyons, the restless circles that suggested a hunt or perhaps a chase. Alpha's story was being written in invisible ink, a secret script running through the vast and turbulent ocean. Then, suddenly, it stopped. One morning, the team found themselves staring at the signal from the tracker, now transmitting from dry land. Alpha was gone. All that remained was a battered geotag, discovered washed up on a remote stretch of beach, miles from anywhere. The salt and sand of the shoreline clinging to the only clue they had left. As they pored over the recovered data, a chill set in. The final moments of Shark Alpha's journey played out in digital numbers and hard facts, each detail stranger than the last. On Christmas Eve, just before midnight, Alpha had been moving through familiar waters, her pattern unremarkable, when something changed. Without warning, her recorded depth spiked. She began an astonishing plunge, diving deeper than any great white had been documented before, her sleek shape slicing through the cold, black water as she dropped over 1,900 feet in minutes. There was no sign of struggle, no chaotic pattern of flight, only a swift, determined descent straight into the abyss. Then, as abruptly as it began, the dive ended and the tracker registered a sudden, dramatic spike in temperature from the icy 46 degrees of the open ocean to a startling 76. The meaning was both simple and chilling. The tracker was no longer in the water. It was inside something alive and much warmer than the ocean outside. That was the moment everything changed. The scientists, who had come seeking knowledge about sharks, suddenly found themselves hunting something else, something powerful enough to drag a 9-foot, nearly 1-ton predator into the blackest depths and swallow it whole. The ocean, always a realm of secrets, now guarded a mystery even the most seasoned researchers could not explain. Speculation exploded among the team and quickly beyond, spreading through scientific journals, online forums, and television specials. Theories piled up like waves in a storm. Some said a colossal squid had ambushed Alpha in the darkness, its tentacles wrapping her in a crushing embrace and dragging her to a silent grave. Others pointed to the killer whale, the orca, nature's most sophisticated hunter, capable of outsmarting and overpowering even the most formidable sharks. And then there were whispers of something older, something left behind by evolution, a remnant of an ancient age, perhaps a surviving megalodon, the legendary giant shark, whose jaws could engulf a great white hole. Each idea seemed plausible in its own way. Each was supported by fragments of evidence, sightings, or the brutal logic of the food chain. But none could explain every clue, and none could quiet the sense of unease growing among those who looked at the raw numbers and saw a story too strange to ignore. Among the researchers, Dave Riggs was the most restless, his mind churning with questions as he paced the deck late into the night, the Southern Ocean roaring all around him. He fixated on the spot where the signal had vanished, a place he began to call the kill zone, a deep undersea valley that cut through the continental shelf like a scar. It was a place where upwellings brought nutrients from the Earth's crust, attracting schools of fish, whales, and inevitably, predators. Cameras lowered into the gloom recorded fleeting shapes, sharks, orcas, swirling clouds of smaller hunters, but nothing that could explain the violence and speed of Alpha's final dive. Still, Dave believed the answer was down there, somewhere below the reach of sunlight and safety, and he became obsessed with returning to that place and seeing with his own eyes the force that could turn a top predator into prey. He wasn't the only one. As word of Alpha's fate spread, others came to Bremer Bay, drawn by the story of a missing shark and the monstrous possibility of something more. Divers, filmmakers, and thrill-seekers all wanted to glimpse the unknown. Even as warnings circulated about the dangers below, killer whales in hunting packs, aggressive whaler sharks, unpredictable currents, boats kept launching from the harbor, carrying people who dreamed of solving the mystery, or at least of feeling the pulse of fear that comes from looking into the eye of the abyss. Among them, Dave built his own homemade submersible, a patchwork craft armored with fiberglass and a salvaged lawnmower frame, determined to go where few had ever dared. But as the first expeditions began, reality set in quickly. Just 60 feet beneath the surface, teams encountered frenzied schools of whaler sharks, their bodies flashing silver and white as they circled the submersible, testing its shell. Beyond them moved the shadows of killer whales, black and white ghosts in the twilight zone, capable of overturning a boat if provoked. Each dive was a game of inches, a contest between curiosity and survival. After a handful of close calls, one dive cut short by the appearance of nearly 40 hungry sharks, another by a pod of orcas slicing through the water like torpedoes. The team had to retreat. The ocean, it seemed, was not ready to give up its secret, and the kill zone remained as mysterious and dangerous as ever. Still, the evidence gathered on those dives added new layers to the mystery. Cameras captured the stark hierarchy of ocean predators, but also showed that something was happening deeper down. Unexplained movements on the sonar, strange temperature gradients, and the eerie silence that sometimes descended just before the predators scattered. The team noticed that in the days and hours leading up to Alpha's disappearance, the water teemed with unusual activity. Schools of squid massing near the surface, dolphins darting nervously along the drop-off, and, at the edge of vision, the hint of something enormous moving in the shadows. Each clue sharpened the sense of danger. Each new dive raised the stakes. The ocean is a place of rules, but also a place of exceptions. For every known behavior, there is a story that doesn't fit. A predator that hunts in silence, a mystery that slips through the cracks of human understanding. The disappearance of Shark Alpha, at first just a data point in a long experiment, became a riddle that would haunt scientists for years and turn Bremer Bay into the focus of the world's wildest theories. What could consume a great white shark, drag it nearly 2,000 feet down, and leave behind only a tag and a spike in temperature? Was the answer waiting in the dark, Or was it already swimming past, hidden in plain sight? As night fell and the boats returned to shore, the question remained, a challenge to everyone who had ever wondered what waits in the deep. Would you dare to follow the signal, to look where the ocean grows cold and silent, to chase a mystery that might be better left unsolved? The story of Shark Alpha was only just beginning, and the next twist was waiting just beyond the reach of light. The kill zone and the theories. The storm that rolled over Bremer Bay did not bring answers, only more questions. Dave Riggs stood at the edge of the harbor, salt spray misting his face, watching the restless sea churn under a sky layered with gray. Each gust of wind seemed to carry the voices of those who had tried to untangle the fate of Shark Alpha, and each wave crashing against the rocks was like the echo of a challenge set by the ocean itself. He looked out at the water that hid the kill zone, that deep valley in the continental shelf, and he wondered what force could be powerful enough to make a legend disappear without a trace. The question gnawed at him, as it had at everyone who had seen the data, and as he prepared for another attempt, he understood that the search was no longer just about science. It was about confronting the unknown and accepting that the sea's greatest secrets are sometimes its most dangerous. Below the surface, the kill zone came alive in ways few could imagine. Nutrient-rich currents welled up from cracks in the earth, filling the water with life. Clouds of krill drifted past in shining columns, drawing swarms of fish that glittered like coins in the dark. Squid emerged from the gloom, their arms trailing behind them as they hunted silently in the cold, and predators circled at every level. Killer whales patrolled the upper reaches in organized pods, communicating with clicks and whistles. Hunting seals, dolphins, and sometimes even great white sharks. Farther down, whaler sharks prowled with an ancient hunger, their bodies shaped by millions of years of adaptation to the harshest realities of the open ocean. This was not a place for the timid or the unprepared, and Dave's team knew it the moment they descended, the weight of the water pressing in, the light vanishing above them until only the glow of their instruments remained. The search for Shark Alpha's killer began with a careful survey of the food chain, a step-by-step examination of what might be capable of overpowering a predator as fierce and resilient as a great white. Whaler sharks, though numerous and aggressive, were smaller and typically avoided direct confrontation with larger sharks unless driven by desperation or the chaos of a feeding frenzy. Scientists cataloged the scars and bite marks found on the bodies of dead sharks in the area, noting that most wounds matched the jaws of rivals rather than larger unknown creatures. Still, the sheer number of whaler sharks in the kill zone was a warning sign. Where prey gathers, the odds of sudden violence rise, and nothing in the ocean stays on top for long. The killer whales, on the other hand, were a different matter. Orcas are among the most intelligent and versatile hunters in the world. They hunt in coordinated groups, each animal playing a role, herding prey, launching surprise attacks, and even turning great whites upside down to induce a state of paralysis. The stories of orcas attacking sharks are not myths, but documented fact. Marine biologists have observed them tracking, ambushing, and consuming sharks, sometimes eating only the livers, which are rich in fat and energy, and leaving the rest behind. The speed and power of an orca are unmatched in the upper ocean, and for a time, many believed that one of these black and white giants must have been responsible for Alpha's sudden disappearance. The data, though, did not fit. Orcas hunt near the surface, rarely diving more than a few hundred feet in pursuit of prey, and their internal temperature is close to that of humans, much warmer than the 76 degrees recorded by the tracker after Alpha vanished. It was a compelling theory, but the numbers refused to line up. Attention shifted next to the giant squid, the most mysterious of all deep-sea hunters. Elusive and rarely seen, these enormous cephalopods haunt the twilight zone, hundreds or even thousands of feet below the surface, their long arms equipped with suction cups lined with hooks, capable of grasping prey with terrifying strength. For centuries, sailors told tales of kraken dragging ships into the abyss, And while the reality is less dramatic, the danger posed by a giant squid is very real. Their bodies can grow longer than a bus, and their hunting grounds are some of the darkest and most remote places in the ocean. The idea that a squid could have ambushed shark Alpha made sense, especially since the tag's final dive ended nearly 2,000 feet down, in the very zone where giant squid are known to hunt. Evidence began to surface, like the white tip shark found in 2020, covered in massive sucker marks, wounds only a large squid could have inflicted. Yet, the theory had one fatal flaw. Giant squid are cold-blooded. Their body temperature matches that of the water around them. If Alpha had been eaten by a squid, the tracker would not have recorded a spike to 76 degrees. The mystery, rather than narrowing, only widened. Frustration set in among the scientists and divers who had staked so much on this investigation. The ocean seemed determined to guard its secrets, throwing up red herrings at every turn. The team pored over every scrap of evidence, re-examined video footage, ran computer models, and reviewed accounts from local fishermen who spoke in hushed tones about things seen and heard on foggy mornings. They mapped out the timeline in painstaking detail, trying to reconstruct the last moments of Shark Alpha's life. It was during these endless sessions that the most unsettling possibility began to emerge. The idea that the killer was not an orca, not a squid, but something even more unexpected. Ancient monsters haunted the edges of every discussion. The megalodon, that monstrous ancestor of the modern shark, came up again and again. Fossil evidence suggested these giants could grow over 60 feet long, with jaws big enough to swallow a great white hole. Their teeth, some as long as a grown man's hand, spoke of unimaginable power. For decades, stories had circulated of strange shapes on sonar, massive shadows glimpsed in the deep, and unexplained attacks on modern sharks. The kill zone, with its vast undersea valleys and hidden canyons, seemed the perfect lair for a relic of the past. The team weighed the evidence. Could a megalodon have survived, hidden in the unexplored depths, emerging only to hunt before vanishing again? The answer was tantalizing but improbable. While the ocean is vast and mysterious, megalodons would leave more evidence than a single vanished shark. There would be carcasses, tooth marks, more frequent sightings. The romance of the theory was hard to ignore, but science demanded more. Other ancient predators entered the conversation, from the Mosasaurus, a marine reptile that dominated the ancient seas, to Leviathan, a giant sperm whale armed with teeth longer than any known animal. The logic was always the same. If the killer was not something known to science, then perhaps it was a survivor from a lost world. The trouble with such theories, the team reminded themselves, is that fantasy often fills the gaps left by evidence. The ocean, for all its mysteries, is governed by rules as strict as any on land, and the survival of giant predators from a vanished age would require food, breeding partners, and a habitat capable of supporting them. No such evidence had ever surfaced. In the quiet hours after failed dives and fruitless debates, Dave Riggs found himself returning to the data from Alpha's tag, to the spike in temperature and the rapid descent. He imagined the final moments, Alpha swimming through the dark, perhaps sensing a presence behind her, perhaps reacting too late. The sudden attack, the struggle that would have lasted only seconds, and then the long, dark fall to the sea floor, the tracker passing from shark to something else, recording the last, silent moments inside the belly of a predator no one could see. Each replay brought new questions. If not a squid or an orca, then what? If not an ancient monster, then who still ruled these hidden valleys, the places light could not reach? Then came the twist no one expected. In 2014, more than a decade after Alpha's disappearance, researchers studying migration patterns in the kill zone made a startling discovery. Tracking data from other great whites began to match the patterns seen in Alpha's final hours. The temperature spikes, the rapid dives, the abrupt ends, they were not isolated incidents, but recurring events. For the first time, the scientists began to consider the unthinkable. What if the killer was not something unknown, but another great white shark, a monstrous, cannibalistic specimen, far larger than Alpha herself, a predator among predators who ruled the kill zone with unmatched ferocity. The more they looked, the clearer the pattern became. Cannibalism among sharks is not unheard of, especially among larger individuals with limited food sources, and in the wild depths of the Southern Ocean, the laws of survival are unforgiving. The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the dark, a giant great white, nearly twice the size of Alpha, hunted its own kind, a shadow moving through the cold like a living nightmare. The tag's 76-degree spike matched the internal temperature of a great white's stomach, not an orca, not a squid. The answer had been hidden in the data all along, waiting for someone to see what was right in front of them. It was not a kraken, not a megalodon, but the ocean's oldest story. A bigger predator always waits in the deep. The revelation brought both relief and awe. The mystery had been solved, but the reality was more haunting than any legend. The kill zone remained a place of violence and beauty, where even the greatest hunters could become prey in the blink of an eye. The cycle continued, unbroken, as the ocean's secrets churned in the cold, endless blue. For Dave Riggs and the team, the answer raised new questions. How many other giants lurked in those valleys, unseen and unstudied? How had a great white grown so large, so powerful, and how many more might follow? The ocean, it seemed, always had one more secret, one more twist, waiting just beyond the reach of human understanding. The search for Shark Alpha's killer had ended, but the journey into the abyss was only beginning. In the end, the only certainty was that the ocean keeps its own counsel, and that some mysteries, once solved, lead only to deeper wonders. When monsters are real. When the news finally broke and the world heard that a great white shark had fallen to a larger cannibalistic rival, fascination erupted across every corner of the internet. For many people, the answer felt both thrilling and unsettling. The ocean had delivered a lesson that no myth or legend could match. And it was this: even in a world where humans chart the sky, split the atom, and send probes to distant planets, there are still places on Earth ruled by forces older and far more powerful than us. The kill zone became a modern Atlantis, a haunted ground where every diver, every fisherman, every scientist dreamed of peering into the dark and seeing the monster that no one else had seen. News cameras showed up on the wind-beaten docks of Bremer Bay, their bright lights cutting through the morning mist, hoping to catch a glimpse of the science teams setting out once more to chase a shadow through endless water. Dave Riggs found himself changed by the hunt, not just as a researcher, but as a man who had faced the abyss and found the unknown staring back at him. In quiet moments, he would recall the feeling of the ocean pressing in on every side, the darkness outside the submersible window, and the knowledge that somewhere in those black corridors swam a force of nature so ancient, so relentless, that it could swallow even the most legendary predator without leaving a ripple behind. The rest of the world watched from a distance, safe behind screens and newsprint, never feeling the cold pulse of water that hums through the bones of anyone who truly dares to follow a question where it leads. There were debates and arguments that raged for months. Some could not accept that the killer was merely another shark. They wanted a monster, a beast from the lost age of giants, or a secret horror that science could not name. But what the data revealed was even stranger, because it meant that the greatest threat to a legend was not something mythical, but something real, something that had survived and thrived by playing the same ruthless game as its victim. The ocean, after all, does not care for legends. It only cares for the laws of hunger, strength, and survival. Still, for every answer, a dozen questions remained. How many giant great whites still swim the deep valleys of the Southern Ocean? Could this new breed of super shark exist elsewhere, haunting other coasts and slipping past the eyes of research teams who believe the world's monsters are gone? The cold truth is that the ocean is still a frontier, mostly unmapped, mostly unexplored. And every time a tag stops transmitting, every time a story like Alpha's surfaces, we are reminded that there are rules we have yet to write, and creatures we have yet to meet. Shark Alpha's story became a parable told around research vessels and in classrooms, on social media feeds, and by people standing on the shore at sunset. It is a warning that the wild is not as far away as we like to think. It is a promise that the planet still has the power to shock us, and a dare to anyone who believes there is no magic left in the world. The scientists went home, the news cycle moved on, but the ocean did not forget. In the depths of Bremer Bay, in the hidden valleys where the cold currents swirl and the sunlight fades, something still waits and watches. The cycle of predator and prey, as old as time itself. Dave, now older, sometimes stands on the dock as dusk falls, watching the water turn to ink, and he feels both awe and a kind of peace. The mystery had drawn him to the edge of fear and back, had made him respect the silence of the deep and the stories it still holds. In every echoing call of a whale, in every dark shape that glides beneath the hull, he hears the truth he learned from Shark Alpha. Not all monsters are imaginary, and sometimes the real ones are the most extraordinary of all. The ocean never truly gives up its secrets. For every mystery solved, a new one rises, cold and hungry, waiting for the next bold soul to chase it into the blue. For the people of Bremer Bay, the story became a legend that mingled with the salt wind and the sound of waves hitting rock. Children would ask their parents if the monster still swam beneath the boats. Tourists would stand at the edge of the jetty, squinting out over the restless sea, hoping to catch the flash of a fin or the rise of some ancient shape through the mist. The truth was both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because the monster was real, terrifying because it was not alone, and the same forces that ruled the deep ruled every part of nature, both in the ocean and in the world above. Every fisherman who had ever pulled up an empty line, every diver who felt a current tug too hard, every sailor who sailed past the edge of the chart and wondered what lay below, all of them now had a story to tell and a question to ask. The legend of Shark Alpha spread far beyond the bay, drawing filmmakers and journalists, amateur sleuths, and armchair theorists. Some believed there was more to the story, that perhaps a megalodon still survived in the unplumbed trenches of the world, or that giant squid larger than any on record haunted the bottom, dragging down whatever crossed their path. Oceanographers fielded endless questions at conferences, trying to balance the facts with the romance of the unknown, knowing that for every hard answer they gave, there was always a chance of being proven wrong by the next deep-water discovery. Even the skeptics, those who lived by evidence alone, found themselves pausing when they heard of a new tracking signal lost, a new anomaly in the data, or a new wound on a stranded whale that could not be explained by any known creature. The impact on science was as profound as the impact on popular imagination. Funding for deep-sea exploration ticked up, new collaborations formed across countries and continents, and the technology used to track and study sharks improved by leaps and bounds. For the first time, the community of researchers felt they were not just spectators, but active explorers at the edge of something genuinely new. Shark Alpha's disappearance had given them a mystery to solve, and as more stories surfaced, the reality of ocean cannibalism, super predators, and the delicate balance of deep-sea life moved from speculation to fact. Every year brought more discoveries, more insights into the lives of great whites and their kin, more proof that even the top of the food chain was a dangerous place to be. Dave Riggs became a minor celebrity among ocean explorers, invited to share his story at universities and marine institutes, asked to consult on documentaries and adventure series. Yet, for all the recognition, his greatest reward was the knowledge that the ocean's mysteries were far from over. Sometimes, on quiet nights, he would replay the final moments of the search, the sound of the boat rocking in the darkness, the flicker of light on water, and the sense that just beneath the hull, something vast and patient waited. He had learned to respect the limits of knowledge, to accept that some answers could only be earned by those willing to risk failure, and to remember that for every legend explained, a new legend would take its place. Perhaps the greatest twist in Shark Alpha's story is not that she was eaten by a larger shark, but that her legacy survived in every person willing to look deeper, to question the easy explanations, and to believe that the unknown is not something to fear but something to chase. The cycle of predator and prey, of hunter and hunted, of mystery and discovery is as old as the tides themselves. In that eternal rhythm, there is room for every story, fact and fantasy, science and wonder, fear and hope, waiting to be discovered by those with the courage to dive. So the next time you look out at the water and wonder what swims beyond the last glint of sunlight, ask yourself, do you really want to know what is waiting in the dark? Or is the unknown the very thing that keeps us coming back to the ocean's edge, hungry for answers and haunted by the thrill that maybe, just maybe, the greatest monster has yet to be found? The sea is wide and deep, its mysteries older than our oldest stories, and Shark Alpha's fate reminds us that there are still places on this planet where wonder and fear live side by side. We chase answers, and sometimes we find them, but the ocean always keeps some secrets for itself. If you're as fascinated by these mysteries as we are, share your own theories or ocean stories in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's wildest wonders. Until next time, remember that the greatest stories are still swimming just out of sight, waiting for someone brave enough to follow them into the unknown.